and welcome to the Astrology and Spirituality Show for week commencing the 3rd of January. So welcome to the first full week of 2022. We hope you had a great New Year's celebration. So thank you so much for joining us. So any New Year's resolutions for you?
I'm still pondering upon it. I know I should already have them out, but I haven't quite come up with something yet.
It wouldn't be steering clear of aniseed balls, would it?
Oh, I think it might be. Over Christmas, I had some aniseed balls, which I absolutely love, and I have broken my tooth. So I am in a little bit of pain today. So I'm sorry if I'm talking a bit wonky.
Oh, bless you. Well, my New Year's resolution is to get more sleep. We find it a bit hard to switch off. And I hope that if you've set some New Year's resolutions, that they're going to be meaningful for you. And so what does this week hold in store for us with the astrology? Well, Venus and Neptune in the first 12 days of this year are in the most glorious alliance. Venus is in the earthy and rather worldly Capricorn, but Neptune in its home zone of Pisces. This is very much a spiritual connection. So there may be some tie or bond or alliance developing in your situation. It doesn't have to be romantic. Of course, Venus is in a retrograde, but just something that's very meaningful for you could become more obvious by the end of this week, particularly as Venus goes into a conjunction with the Sun. So that's very, very powerful. Now that could be good for hitting the January sales, finding something that's quite valuable but had a good reduction on it, something maybe for the home, maybe some really nice clothes. Maybe there is going to be a relationship that's firming up and becoming something that's going to be of more substance, more long lasting. But also this week, Mars does get into a square with Neptune in the second half of this week. This is more complex. Mars is in the Buccaneerian Sagittarius, very free-spirited. When Mars and Neptune are tangling with one another, it can create illusions, especially around our desires. So, it's great to have that spiritual connection with someone, but we just need to be sure that's what it is. However, the connection between Mars and the Sun is very positive this week, suggesting that if we have a clear idea about our goals and aims, and we have the energy to drive forwards towards them and a clear plan, we can make progress. But just remember that Neptune can drain the vitality of Mars. So it's about setting our intentions and not spreading ourselves too thinly this week. Now, of course, as we come into this week, if you are in Australia or India, it's on the back of the new moon in Capricorn. If you've yet to check out the new moon video for London, New York and Los Angeles for the 2nd, as well as the 3rd for Sydney and Delhi, then please see the link beneath this video. And that energy is pouring its way into this week, and that's asking us to be as enterprising as possible in the Sun's angle to and the Moon's angle to Uranus. So Uranus also in an Earth sign of Taurus. So if we can be more imaginative about how we use our resources, of course with the impact of Omicron, some people have had their employment hit again and have no choice but to try and flex and change. Very frustrating. But Uranus is saying, try to think outside the box in our response to whatever situation we personally are faced with. Now, in terms of the Hermetic wheel, what card have we got this week?
For the entirety of this week, we're in the Three of Pentacles, which I think this card is really stunning. It's not about just enjoying ourselves, but it's not about just a hard slog either. It's about working together in harmony with other people.
Is it about contracts?
It can be about contracts, and it's also about, appreciating and recognizing our own skill sets. Not everybody's going to have the same skill sets. In this card, we see that the stonemason needs the architects to be able to build this cathedral, but the architects can come up with the designs, but they need the stonemason to actually build it. So we don't always have to have the same skill set. In fact, it's brilliant, especially in business, if we're working with people who have a different background to us, have different ways of doing things, might not always agree on it, but we can really collectively come up with some exciting stuff this week if we work with other people.
Isn't one of the things with COVID that I think has been so valuable is that the people who would consider themselves to be professionals perhaps have not had a massive awareness to people who provide services. You know, whether it's people provide care services, perhaps for people who are older, or it could be people who deliver supermarket food deliveries or stock shelves. These actually are the vital citizens in that connection where we all need each other. But I think there's been a tendency, certainly in the UK, to sort of take people like that very much for granted. And perhaps the wonderful thing with COVID for some people is that we may have a greater appreciation of the value of the people who really do provide the cogs in the wheel. No person is an island. We do need people. And it's important that, you know, there's a lot of entitlement around these days. It's important we stay humble for the people that help us. You know, we found in the summer when it's very hot, we always offer people who deliver parcels to us a glass of water. And if they're not British, it's quite touching. You know, they're not used to that kind of response. And so, you know, the more we can be grateful for the support we get from people, the better it is. Now, in terms of the word of the week, we've had shamanism has been recommended to us by Anima, but also we've had a word from Blackadder. We're not going to use that, I'm sorry. One of my favourite Blackadder episodes is when Stephen Fry and Rowan Atkinson are unpacking a Canon as if it was a new video camera or a video game, and they're reading the instructions, and Stephen Fry says, promises pleasure-filled maiming, which is absolutely fantastic, really funny. But we are going to go with shamanism because we feel it's a little bit more spiritual. So what's your take on that then?
Well, shamanism is a religious practice where the practitioner, the shaman, would usually guide someone through a journey of sorts. Usually this is in perhaps a trance-like state to reach a different level of consciousness. And this has been used by indigenous people all over the world for centuries and centuries. More recently, sort of the 20th century, a lot of Western philosophers, scholars, and people kind of took it on and started using it themselves. And I think with any religious practice, you know, we have to go with what feels in alignment to us. So it's not necessarily wrong to use somebody else's culture if we're going to use it in a positive way. But I think there has been some cultural appropriation over the years, you know, people going to festivals wearing feathers and things, not understanding that that is a sacred culture to people. So as long as we treat something with the respect that it is due, I think we can pull upon other cultures and religions and ideas, but we have to make sure we're giving it that respect and understanding where it came from, understanding where the people that, you know, use that came from, and not just whitewashing something because it sounds funky or cool. So that's my take on it.
That's brilliant. And if you'd like to share with us a word for the week for the show for week commencing the 10th, we'd be thrilled if you would do that. And of course, last week we didn't have a birthday solar return winner because we had visitors and we were trying to sort of manage our time as best as possible. Now we have got a winner this week, and it's Janie. Janie was born in Sydney in Australia. One of my best friends was born in Sydney in Australia. She lives in England, Tracy, but whenever she goes back to Sydney, she always feels very much at peace. So I'm going to don the spectacles, Janie. So in your natal chart, Janie, you said that the last 8 years have been quite tough for you. Now, there are some interesting things in your natal chart, not least that, yes, your sun is 17 degrees in Capricorn, but it's in the 10th house, but it's very, very close to the 10th house cusp. Now, you said your time was noon. I don't know if that's an absolute time for you, or that's what you think it was, but that would certainly mean that your career has been very important to you. You also have a very dynamic link between Mars and Venus, a conjunction that's very, very tight in the sign of Aquarius in the 10th house. So you have a potential there to be quite innovative in your approach, even if you take responsibility on. I think the energy of Venus and Mars in Aquarius are helping you to look at things in a different way. And I think communication has been something that you've had a real talent for. However, there are some challenges in your natal chart, if I could be so honest, not least that you have Saturn on Chiron. They're pretty close together in the 11th house. So I would have thought, even though that Aquarius, Venus, Mars conjunction gives you an appreciation of the group and the needs of society and gives you a natural friendliness in some ways, in another way, having Saturn in the watery Pisces but next to Chiron in the 11th house means that I think friendships has perhaps been an area that's been quite complex for you over time. Also, your Saturn is in opposition with Uranus, which those are the two rulers of Aquarius, so they're kind of a little bit in competition, and I think nervous tension may have been an issue over time. And also Pluto is opposite that Saturn but also opposite that Chiron. So I feel that there has been some very tender phases in your situation, to be honest. And you also have the moon in Cancer, which of course is where it's at home. You were born just after a full moon, so the moon had gone past the exact opposition with the sun, but it means every time there's a lunation involving the signs of Cancer and Capricorn, particularly when we went through that solar eclipse series about 3 years ago, I think that would have been, quite a tough couple of years potentially. Your moon's on the Anartic degree. That's very important in astrology. That means it's in the last degree. Some people would say that can make people prevaricate a little bit and at times then make very sudden moves. But the moon's in the 4th house, so that's a good place for the moon to be. Very much a home lover, I would feel, even though you have got this massive energy at the top of your chart, which has pushed you to take on responsible roles or had contact with people in positions of influence. Now, your midpoint, the balance between your sun and the moon, is actually very close to the fixed star Spica in Libra, which is a beautiful star, and it suggests that having a midpoint very close to your part of fortune in the 7th house, relationships have been a key part. So when relationships have not run smoothly, that's very jarring for you. And I think if we look at your solar return, which is what I would do for people normally, the big takeout is that you have a conjunction between Venus and the Sun for this year in the 2nd house. So I'm really hoping that your financial situation will be better. You do have Mars in a square with Neptune, as we have this week, but Mars for you is in the 1st house. So that's saying to you, Sagittarius ascendant is saying to be more action orientated, but you do also have the moon very, very close to Neptune. So the moon squaring Mars, Neptune squaring Mars, and the moon and Neptune are in the 4th house. So I think this could be a delicate year in terms of where you live. I didn't want to go much more into the solar return for you because I thought, because of what you said, it was more valuable to look at your secondary progressions. Now, this is where we count forwards the amount of days that someone's been on the planet. So a day for a year, the sun moves around about 1 degree each year on this basis. And the moon at the moment is 15 degrees in Leo for you. So it is opposite the move in Saturn. So I think, a sense of inhibition might be there. And also in your long-term progression, Saturn's very close to the Sun, again in the 10th house, and Saturn's still close to Chiron. So those responsibilities that you've had in recent years and the square that's gone on between Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto squaring up with your midpoint in your 7th house, I think it's been very sensitive around where you work, how you work there and who you're with. But the great news is that Jupiter's going to give you a lot of uplift this year as it sweeps through the sign of Pisces. It's already moved there. Of course, it went briefly into Pisces earlier in 20, came back the last 3 days. It's going to move on the 10th of May into Aries. But from now until then, you have a chance to uplift your situation by Jupiter making a lot of contacts for you. So I think new job, new possibilities can come through for you this year. But I think your chart is probably the most complex I've looked at on the show. So if you would like to contact me to discuss it in greater detail, or have a one-to-one with me, I'd be more than happy to help you. But you do have some quite severe juxtapositions in your chart, particularly with Pluto opposite Chiron and opposite Saturn. So here to help if you would like that. Now, if you would like to enter your details for the show for week commencing the 10th of January through to the 16th, please share with me your time, date and place and where you live now, because that's important for the solar return. Now, what about the modality this week? What are you going to go for?
Well, this week we're going to use the Soul Purpose Oracle cards. We've not used these for ages. They're so beautiful. They've got these wonderful patterns on. They're very bright and colourful. Would you like to pick a card this week?
Yeah.
I'll give them a shuffle though.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Ooh, lovely. It matches the colour of your shirt. Law of attraction here. But the word on this card is doubt. And it says here, I release the need to know all the answers. Wow. I feel this card is speaking to me in some way.
I think it could be speaking to all of us.
Yeah.
Because, people who are avidly interested in astrology, tarot, whatever, there's a lot of preoccupation, particularly with me, with what's around the corner. And what I've learned, particularly off you over the last few years, is that we've got to really stay in the present the best we can. We all know that living in the present is the trick. We spend a lot of time reflecting on the past. That can be very important and very valuable at certain periods in our life. But a friend of mine, Bill, he died 8 years ago. I've known his daughter since we were 5, and he was a tremendous person, and he had this incredible gift to be in the moment, and he kept that going right until he passed. So doubt for me is the opposite of hope. Hope is also based on confidence in our ability to affect our situations. But I think because of social media and the way the world is these days, people worry about governments having control of us. I think there are certain governments in the world that do have sinister motives, if I'm honest. But and some people would say, get over it. Of course, the Western world has cynical motives. Okay, perhaps around weapons and so on, that might be true. But we have a lot of free speech, but we don't have a lot of influence in some ways. The corporate sort of digital giants have so much power over us. It's absolutely unbelievable. I mean, if we have a discussion about a hat, suddenly all these adverts for hats are coming up on my phone. How is that? Obviously the technology tunes into us in ways that, have been going on for a long time. But I think hope comes from a confidence that we can influence things. But I respect that that's not always easy to feel that, because sometimes we can feel very small, very overwhelmed, particularly by something like COVID.
It's interesting that you said that, because on this card it's saying I release the need to know all the answers. And I think when you're somebody who wants to achieve things in life and wants to get things right and maybe a bit of a perfectionist, it can be difficult to release that. And you've taught me, particularly lately when I've been having a bit of trouble with technology, to know that it will be figured out at some point. You know, it will be sorted out at some point, and not to allow that stress of not knowing all the answers straight away get on top of me.
Yeah,
I'm very much like, I need to, if I don't know something, I have to Google it straight away. I can't just exist not knowing. And maybe one of my New Year's resolutions then is to let that go a little bit.
Oh, but good for you.
You've taught me that.
Now we've got another slightly different theme come up. So we mentioned this last week, a lovely follower of our show, Carmen Kardashian, but not those Kardashians, has written a wonderful children's book, and it's been crazy here with various things, but Elisa read this last night.
Yes, front to back, every page. And it is called The Untold Stories of a Water Dragon. And it's so beautiful, this book.
But the context of this was that Carmen was saying that she felt that Aquarius people have a good sense of community. I do feel that, you know, being a multiple Aquarius, because I've got Moon, Venus conjunction with the IC there, I also have in equal house astrology, the Sun is in Aquarius, but in the 4th house. So they're all in the 4th house, and Chiron's there as well. So very Aquarius type of chart, and my midpoint is at 6 degrees Aquarius as well. And Aquarius people can feel that they're in a little bit of a club. But the more you get into serious astrology, the more you realise that the Sun is only one. It's a very big part of who we are, but it's not the only part. And, you know, people's charts can be very, very complex. So just pushing back a little bit on that, but your point, Carmen, was about community and about how people help each other. So,
and I think
how does this book feed into that?
Book, even if you are not interested in spirituality, or you wanted to, you know, get it for someone who didn't know anything about spirituality, that's fine, because it doesn't delve into the ins and outs of, you know, spirituality in that way. It's more to do with, yes, community, it's to do with friendship, and it's to do with identity and finding belonging. I won't spoil the book for anyone, but Nessie is this Loch Ness monster. It's set in Scotland, so it's got some beautiful ideas of what, you know, the surrounding area.
We did just in chat last night. You said, "Yeah, I really got this in my head."
And there's quite a few funny things in here. Like, one of the things is the dragon wants to learn to blow fire, so she eats a curry, which doesn't quite work out. So that really made me laugh.
Clearly had curries from around this area.
And then there's
not the same as in the West Midlands, I'm afraid.
There's a character in this book, my favourite character. He's only in it for a little bit, but his name's Tippy, and he's a bat who is really obsessed with fermented fruits and how it makes him feel.
So what Carmen's done, which you were telling me last night, is quite funny, because this book is actually quite earthy. So we got themes of liking a tipple, Tippy.
Yeah, Tippy likes a tipple.
And also sort of bodily sounds.
Yeah, you know, it is earthy, and I can imagine kids would be really laughing at this book, but equally for adults. I just want to show you a little bit of the illustrations.
The illustrations are fantastic.
This is so beautiful. This is, the little dog gets a bit ill in this point. That's the other thing. It doesn't shy away from
some of the realities
that happens, you know, in our lives.
But the illustrations are absolutely
these
fabulous.
Are the little dragonflies, and it's so pretty. So thank you so much, Carmen, and you put a little note in.
So lovely note
for us, which is so beautiful. So yes, really enjoyed it. Very uplifting.
And of course, we featured Gillian's book before about how you can declutter a home. Gillian is also an incredibly gifted writer. So if we share both books underneath this, the links to Amazon, we've got no financial interest in this whatsoever. These are just genuine followers of the show. Carmen's a lovely, warm person. And if you would care to buy her or Gillian's book, that would be absolutely lovely, because I think they're both very, very good books in different ways. So if you would have something that you want us to share, you know, you have some kind of activity, a book, a poem, some music, you have a product that's linked to raising consciousness or kindness in any way, shape or form, please let us know, and we'd be happy to share it. So the final stages of this week. What haven't we covered?
I think we're there. We're still in post-Christmas.
Still getting our heads.
Yes.
I think what we should do after this actually is get this downloaded on the computer and go for a walk down on the beach.
Oh,
what
I
do you
think that'd be lovely. Yeah, we'll do that.
Maybe we could put a photograph of the beach on this
video. Because by the
it?
time we come back, we'll have a picture, so we can put it on.
By the time we come back from the beach, we'll have a picture.
It's so beautiful.
So, thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful week, and all the best from the A-team. So it is goodbye from him, and it is goodbye from
her. Goodbye.
Bye. Hello. On this beautiful beach, and you can see we did paddle actually on Boxing Day.
Boxing Day.
Yeah.
I don't think we're doing it today.
It's actually, it's cold, but it could be cold.
So here's some ocean vibes.